the article, the article actually said that some brothers think that just because it contains a small amount of blood,
Right.
that they leave it to their conscience. So, you know, you're saying you can take a small amount if your conscience allows you, but what constitutes a small amount? And we can see no difference between a small amount of blood and which they would imagine would be in a vaccination or in an injection. Between that or a pint of blood.
Right. That's right. Jesus said, "He that's faithful in little is faithful in much," and that was the principle. So, with those thoughts in mind, the reason we've digressed a little bit there is to give you an idea as to why the problem arose with this sister, sister. In fact, she wasn't even baptized, but she was in the hospital. She was the wife of a baptized witness. So we contacted the man by telephone, and he drove up to Dublin the very next morning before the operation. John had breakfast with him in a restaurant in town, explained how he felt about the situation, and said, "Look, it's up to yourself. You know, we're not telling you to take a blood transfusion. It is entirely up to yourself." So the man decided that his wife wouldn't have a blood transfusion, and thank God she had her operation and she didn't need blood and she was all right, and that's great, and we're delighted about that. But at least we cleared our conscience. Now in the next few weeks we had 3 other situations just like that from various parts of the country dealing with blood transfusion.
And that just goes to show how respected John and Martin were, because these brothers came to John and Martin over these issues rather than going to local elders, because they were so well known.
So, and anyhow, the people that we spoke to about blood transfusion, they started obviously talking to their friends. I mean, it was extraordinary that John May and Martin Merriman were saying these things. We would have been considered the last people in the world, in Ireland, and anyhow, to talk about these matters in this way.
Actually, in fact, since the time they came back from America, they didn't say anything for about 6 months. But I work for John, and we see each other every morning, and we read a portion of the Bible every morning before we go out to work. We read
all the workers.
All the workers, a whole lot of us. And I noticed a change in John's attitude towards the reading of the Bible since that time. And I got worried about him. I thought he was falling out of the truth. So I actually went to one of my elders and, you know, asked them, what can I do to help John? And we had a chat about it, and I had a chat to John, and he assured me that he wasn't falling out of the truth, that he was okay, there was nothing to worry about, which it made me feel better. But little did I know what was going on.
Right. So, word got around that things weren't as they always had been for Martin Merriman and John May as regard our association with the organisation and that. So next of all, the circuit officer was sent in called Ewan Watt. Ewan Watt's a little Scots brother, and I've known Ewan for how long do I know Ewan? About 7 or 8 years, and he hastily called a meeting with our body of elders before the school and service meeting. He called a meeting at 7 o'clock, and our meeting starts at 7:30, and he called the elders into the Kingdom Hall, and he took them into the back room, and he told them that he was there to form a committee to deal with John and myself, John May and myself. So on that body of elders, naturally we've some very close friends. We've served on the body of elders for years. They came out of the room and told us that he was forming, the circuit officer was forming a judicial committee to meet with us. So when Brother Watt, Ewan Watt, the circuit officer, came out of the room, he called John outside of the Kingdom Hall while the meeting was going on, and he spent 45 minutes outside with John May. Now, John came in and told me that Brother Ewan Watt wanted me outside in his car to have a conversation. So I said to John, well, what's it all about, John? And he said, well, he said, he's discussing with me about our trip to America, and John had the file with him, the RaymondFranz file, which when you read it for yourself, shows absolutely clearly that the man was disfellowshipped for having one single meal with a disassociated man, and nothing else. There was no other reason for his disfellowshipping. It also demonstrates that the case was handled very hastily, not at all in accord even with the society's direction of taking time to study matters and always, view what the Bible has to say about things, do not be hasty and so forth, and this was done with the greatest haste in the world. And anyhow, John had the material with him and offered it to Brother Hume Watt to read, to enable him to get a clear picture of why John was feeling as he was feeling and why I felt that way. And Brother Watt said to him, listen, he said, what is true or false, right or wrong, is not important. Is it in harmony with the society's policy, and are you talking about it? Now that's what he said. So John said to me he didn't like the sound of that. So I went out to the car and then he had to meet Ewan Watt. We sat in the car and Ewan said, well, what's it all about? So I said, well, what do you know about it? And he said, well, I've just arrived in Dublin from the north of Ireland, so I don't really know anything. Nothing. But I want to meet with you with a committee on Saturday, if that's convenient. So I said, well, what is the nature of the committee? And he said, it's investigative. So I pointed out to him that according to the Kingdom School textbook and to the Society's direction, that that is not the way you go about investigating. Normally, a body of elders will appoint perhaps two brothers to go and meet with the person to ascertain is there a case to be answered. Then you go back and report to the body of elders. Then you form a committee. Then you invite people to a hearing. I said, now this is a bit like the cart before the horse. So he insisted that there was going to be a committee hearing and that was the end of it. So I asked him, was it judicial? And he said, no. The two elders on that body of elders heard him categorically say it was judicial. Anyhow, in the time we were conversing, John May came back out of the Kingdom Hall, asked me to get out of the car. I excused myself, got out and spoke to John. John said to me, look at Martin, I feel they want to meet with me on Friday night. They're not going to read this evidence. I don't feel there's any point in me meeting with them because I feel I probably will get the same treatment that RaymondFranz got. So John said, I'm having my letter of resignation read out tonight. So he asked me, did I want my letter read out? And I said, no. So John went back into the Kingdom Hall, and 15 minutes later or so he came back out, and Ewan Watt and I got out of the car, and John said to Ewan, look Ewan, you've said what is true or false, right or wrong, doesn't matter. What mattered was it out of harmony with the society's policy and was it talking about it? So John said, I'm not meeting with you. He said, I've spent 15 years in association with the Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. I've been happy, but I cannot conscientiously go along with something that violates what the Bible says. So he said to Ewan, it's been nice knowing you, and he put out his hand to shake hands with Ewan Watt. And after 15 years of knowing that man, and the kind of man that John May is, he's a wonderful Christian man. He's my friend, I know that. I grew up on the same street as him. I know I'm biased, but you can go to any brother and sister in the Republic or the North of Ireland, any brother and sister, and I include Arthur Matthews, who's the branch coordinator, Fred Metcalf, Peter Andrews, they're the branch committee, and you ask them, any one of them, is John May a good or an evil man? And they will tell you John May is a good man, and he is a good man. And on that night, Ewan Watt shamed himself by turning away and not taking that man's hand. And the brothers and sisters in the congregation were very upset about that, and are still very upset about it. So, and anyhow, one word borrowed another. John went off home. My wife was there. She was very upset with Ewan's treatment of John. She sat in Ewan Watt's car with me, and she pressed him about the nature of the committee again. And he said, yes, well, you could say it was judicial. But I said, you said to me it wasn't judicial. He says, well, a committee is a committee. So anyhow, I pointed out to him that it's all right to view it like that if your head wasn't on the chopping block, but if it was your head, you wouldn't view a committee as a committee as a committee. You'd want to know what this committee is and what it was about. So he then said to me, well, will you meet with us tomorrow night? And I said, I won't meet with you tomorrow night. I said, it's too soon. I said, and besides, I have 4 kids and a wife to support. I've got to go to work tomorrow. I'm going into the country, and I don't know what time I'll be back at. I said, Saturday you said, and Saturday it is. So he said, fair enough. So we were on our way home that night, and we called into a brother's home, Brother Peter Doyle, presiding overseer. Now he read out John May's resignation that night, and he resigned from being an elder that very night too, because of the treatment that the circuit overseer was meting out to John May and myself, and he wasn't going to be a party to it, so he resigned that night. So when I got to Peter's house, Peter Doyle's house, he'd been an elder, by the way, for about 9 years. He'd served in Dublin, and he'd served in Scotland, in the British Isles. So he was a man of quite experience. And anyhow, when I got to Peter's house, there was John May and his wife Yvonne. And that very night, 40 brothers and sisters came to Peter's home. And a number of them disagreed with John and myself, perhaps on the viewpoint we'd taken. But what they disagreed even more strongly with was the treatment of society, namely the governing body, the branch office and the circuit overseer was trying to mete out to us. And they shook hands with John, and they told him they will eat and drink with him any time they feel like it. And they are, any time. There's a stream of people to John's home, any day of the week. Anyhow, before I met with them on the Saturday, I sent a letter to our body of elders, the local body of elders, requesting 3 things, really 4 things. The first one was, I wanted a written invitation to the meeting, where it was going to be and what time, which I think is a fairly normal procedure. And then I wanted 3 things that I felt were in harmony as well and fairly normal. 1, I wanted to know the makeup of the committee that would hear my case. 2,